The digital transformation of banking is taking place across Asia. Governments and corporates are investing heavily in new technologies. Well, to share his views on the key opportunities and challenges this is creating for banks in Asia, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by John Lawrence in the studio. John is Group Head Global Transaction Services at DBS Group. Welcome to Sibos TV. Now, this has been an extraordinary year for DBS Group. You've had quite a few accolades. World's best digital bank, #1 in global customer satisfaction, and best bank in the world. Very impressive. There's obviously a story behind this. Share it with us, especially in the context of transaction banking.
Yes, thank you. I mean, clearly it has been a phenomenal year. We're clearly particularly pleased in terms of those sort of global accolades, and hopefully that does reflect what we're doing as a bank and what the industry and our customers see what we're doing in that regard. Digital has been absolutely at the core of the transformation of the bank. Digital to the core is a key mantra of DBS, and clearly into the transaction banking is very tech intensive, so it very much applies in terms of the transaction banking space. And we've been on quite a journey over the past 4 or 5 years in terms of building out our capabilities in the transaction banking space. And I think what's really helped us as an institution, particularly as we've developed on the cash management side, we've been a relative latecomer to the market. So as a consequence, we've been able to go to the latest technology in the marketplace today. So all of our cash management product build is on cloud-based architecture, and that's really enabled us to go to market quickly, and it really has rewritten some of the rules, I think, that applies to our industry around cost and scale, and has turned many of those things on its head. And that's been a key ingredient in terms of the success that we've had and hopefully continue to have going forward.
Now, I'm fascinated by this, that you came onto the digital game quite late in some ways, 4 or 5 years ago. So what has been the strategy? How would you describe it?
Well, I think it depends. As a bank, actually I'd suggest we're probably quite early versus many other parts of the industry in terms of orientating the whole bank around sort of digital. Our mantra has really been around, as I say, digital to the core, customer obsessed. And a big part of the program is sort of gone beyond technology, and clearly, in terms of our people and the cultural change that we drive. And a key driver of that has been we implemented a human-centered design philosophy right across the institution, and combined that with Agile. And we took that from the top of the organisation down. So actually, every managing director and above in the bank went through this training around human-centered design and agile methods of working. And each managing director was required to lead either a customer journey and or employee journey. So we've really looked to sort of lead from the top in that regard, and that's just trickled down through the organisation. We have a key drive for the organisation is we reference internally about operating as a 23,000 person startup. So we want our people to work in agile methods, experiment, drive innovation, be able to move and do things quickly, which is perhaps not things that you would associate necessarily with the sort of traditional banking industry.
But you've done it, or rather, I should say you're doing it, and you're doing it very successfully given these accolades. But you must have met quite a few challenges along the way. What were they?
Yes, I think, again, the different organisations approach this whole transformation in different ways. I mean, some look at either creating separate entities, units to sort of create a digital bank or separate sort of innovation unit. We've actually looked to make this all pervasive across the organisation in the way that I've just described. And I think that's been absolutely essential to success, because today, if you look at the way in which we operate, if one looks at our traditional core products and capabilities and what we've done, say, for instance, in our API suite development, it really is impossible to pull apart what is sort of traditional core, if you like, plumbing relative to digital APIs. Where one ends and the other begins is actually impossible to determine. So providing that sort of end-to-end experience for our customers, I think, is just been hugely important, has enabled us to work in places in the marketplace and align with our customers' own digital strategies, and that's a critical part of what we're doing. I can't overemphasize that to you.
And let's look at that relationship with your clients. I mean, how would you describe that relationship, and what differentiates your approach to that perhaps of other players in the field?
Well, as you say, we're really delighted in terms of the Euromoney poll. It's 25,000 corporates globally. We rank number one globally in terms of customer satisfaction for cash management. Clearly delighted with that vote of confidence from our customers in the marketplace. We have internally the DBS strategy, the overall strategy for the bank, is depicted in the form of a house with 5 pillars on this house, and the central pillar references Asian service. And it conjures up really what Asia is all about in terms of service delivery and the commitment to service. And on that pillar, we also have an acronym, RED, R-E-D. And RED stands for respectful, easy to deal with, and reliable and dependable. So that's been absolutely a central pillar of our strategy as a bank. And as I said earlier, in terms of we truly are sort of customer obsessed in terms of wanting to look at what is the customer journey, how do we work with customers to co-create, and particularly as customers are developing their own digital strategies, how do we work with them to achieve their objectives in that end? Yeah. So that client delivery, that client service philosophy is really very deep in our DNA, very important to the bank and its customers.
You use the word journey a lot, and I want to stick with that concept because I want you to take me on a journey over the next 3 to 5 years to give me a sense of what DBS Global Transaction Service is going to look like in that period. Where is our journey taking us?
Well, look, when we embarked upon the development, particularly in terms of the cash management side of the business, and I can remember our head of technology referencing, well, we should, as well as develop this, and we should also develop this on cloud-based architecture. And that's been, personally been a real learning in terms of just what that brings in terms of changing the cost to serve and delivery dynamics of the business. So look, I think going forward, I really do believe that in terms of as banks look to become more like tech companies, I think it's certainly the journey we're on as an organization, and start to embrace cloud-based architecture as part of their core operating infrastructure going forward. I think you'll see, because in the past our industry has been sort of built on the basis of large fixed cost infrastructure that you spread across as many countries globally as you can and put volume through it. I think that old scale cost game has changed. And I think we're at the forefront of that change, and that's enabled us to compete, very effectively as a bank with an Asia Pacific. We're a pure play Asia Pacific bank, delivering Asia Pacific to the rest of the world, but being able to compete at the very, as per the accolades you gave earlier, at the top of the market. So we're going to see the use of that infrastructure really enable us to further develop our API suite. That's going to change the way in which companies interact with banks and the connectivity therein. You can foresee things like proprietary corporate internet banking channels starting to look quite dated and old relative to new and not bank proprietary connectivity solutions. I think that's very important going forward. I think also, we're just starting to see the blurring of boundaries across what banks might see as different product sets, be it cash, trade, and so on. As companies today that want to have a working capital discussion, but actually more so today, a key driver, as every business out there today, whether they're large or small, is looking to embrace technology and define their go-forward digital strategy. And it's that customer engagement that is really going to drive the future of what we do as an institution. It's driving it today. It's unquestionably going to drive us going forward. So I think the future looks very different, and I'd like to think that as an institution, we are leading the charge in that respect and disrupting the industry as we go, for the better for all, hopefully.
Well, it sounds like a good journey to me, but John Lawrence, thank you so much for joining
Juliet,
us
thank
on
you.
Sibos TV. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you.